Hello and welcome. I am Gimba Umar. Tonight, federal government blames corruption and fallen crude oil prices for poor state of the economy, promises a rough road to economic prosperity. And Benue farming communities demand 100 billion naira as compensation for victims of herdsmen attacks in the state. People's Democratic Party seeks to mend rifts amongst its leadership. Party board of trustees meets with factional leaders. And U.S. Republican candidate Donald Trump wins enough delegates to secure his party's presidential ticket.
On business news tonight, oil prices hit $50 a barrel on global disruptions as OPEC members prepare to meet in Vienna.
And on sports news tonight, Channel's National Kids Cup Season 8 set for grand finale with Kogi and Kaduna State locking horns in the final.
I'm Gloria Umezoke, and tonight from Abuja, President Buhari felicitates with Nigerian children ahead of Children's Day celebration, reassures Nigerians of his commitment to securing the well-being of every child.
The current state of the Nigerian economy has continued to dominate discussions at different fora. And today, it re-echoed in Abuja at a meeting between the Minister of Information and members of the Broadcasting Organization of Nigeria, BON. According to the Minister, Alhaji Lai Mohammed, the country's economy would have collapsed totally if the present administration had not been elected. Alhaji Mohammed, who acknowledged that Nigeria is indeed passing through a very difficult time, blamed the situation on corruption and the fallen prices of crude oil.
As the present administration marks its first year in office, 5 federal ministers held a meeting with members of the Broadcasting Organization of Nigeria. Media executives listened to the ministers as they took time to explain their achievements and challenges over the past 1 year. The most challenging for the new administration has been the economy.
Our economy, whatever is left of it after years of serious mismanagement and massive corruption, is in a very bad state. Throw into the mix the huge fall in oil price, and you have nothing but a disaster of an economy. But then this government is aware it was not elected to make excuses, but to put the nation back to work.
The ministers promised that the administration would focus on tackling insecurity, fight corruption, and revamp the economy. But there are a backlog of issues to be sorted out, like the huge debt owed contractors.
We must not allow yesterday's misfortunes to recur again. It starts from the gradual process of failing to do simple maintenance, of failing to paint, of failing to clean. And this is where we almost are at. So the impact of what you see today clearly didn't start today. So if we have paid contractors, we clearly won't have the kind of roads that we have today. My meeting with contractors in power and in works over the last 10 days, the common thread is that they haven't received payment for an average of 3 years.
The contractors are not being paid for jobs done, owed huge mountain of debt, even when budgets have been operated from 2012 to now, and they have not been paid. The liabilities, if I know he didn't want to say it, but it runs into very big billions in the neighborhood of trillions, he said, the liabilities over there.
Nevertheless, the administration reaffirms its commitment to embark on infrastructure development.
If you can't provide power to everybody at the same time, or the infrastructure more broadly, the best thing to do is to provide it to the industrial sectors in specific areas, either in special economic zones or in industrial parks or other industrial clusters. And we're developing a strategy which we're going to be implementing over the next few years that will make sure that the infrastructure that is needed in those particular parks are there, as opposed to trying to sort of spread out all the infrastructure, given the limitations we have in terms of funding and in terms of time.
The ministers assured that the government would fulfill its election campaign promises to Nigerians.
Although Nigeria has made considerable progress in prosecuting money laundering cases, federal authorities have to extend its spotlight on prominent politicians. This is according to a former Director General of the Intergovernmental Action Against Money Laundering in West Africa, Professor Abdullahi Shehu. Speaking at a forum on the National Risk Assessment on Money Laundering and Terrorist Financing, Professor Shehu says that if Nigeria wants to be taken seriously by the international community, federal authorities must convict those found guilty. Other speakers called for the development of an action plan that can be implemented at all levels of governance.
The representative of the Vice President.
This is perhaps the most important threat with regard to Nigeria. Although significant progress has been made with respect to dealing with money laundering cases, and considerable amount of energy and resources have been invested, some results have been achieved by way of securing conviction, but I stand to say that we still face the greatest threat once the politically exposed persons who have undermined the progress of this country are not sufficiently brought to law and are sanctioned according to law. This will give an impression that criminals have been empowered, and it gives also an impression of continuing in what we call not public rascality, I can say impunity. The impunity that our country has been accused of.
There is the need to ensure proper implementation of the content of the NRA report by 1. Developing action plan with realistic timelines, and to properly identify both principal stakeholder institutions that will be responsible in addressing identified gaps. 2. Putting in place mechanisms for communicating the outcomes of the NRA to all stakeholders. And 3. Undertaking regular update of the document to ensure that emerging issues are captured and mitigating factors are put in place.
The Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, the EFCC, and other anti-corruption campaign groups took to the streets today to drum up support for the federal government's war against graft. Our judiciary correspondent, Shola Shoile, reports.
The walk against corruption took place simultaneously in the 6 geopolitical zones of the country. In Lagos, officials of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, members of the National Youth Service Corps, alongside other groups in support of the war against corruption, walked from the Commission's office in the Ikoyi area to Obalinde, through Broad Street to Tinubu Square and back. The walk lasted about 2 hours. The Deputy Director of Operations who led the walk says the idea is to mobilize and educate members of the public to key into the anti-graft war.
The fight is not only for government. The fight is not only for EFCC. The fight is for everybody. That is the reason why we have gone around to educate members of the public.
In Port Harcourt, the capital of Rivers State, members of the South-South zone of the Commission also took to the streets. The zonal head of the Commission who led the walk, tagged "Let's Fight Corruption Together," says the level of rot in the system and the recoveries made so far is shocking.
There's a political will. Nobody anywhere in the world can doubt the sincerity, integrity, purposefulness of the president we have in President Muhammadu Buhari.
The message is clear. Everyone needs to get on board and kill corruption before it kills the country. Shola Shoile, Channels Television News.
The Minister of Finance, Kemi Adeosun, says that the federal government is being cautious as it plans to invest pension funds worth about 6 trillion naira. The minister said this when she appeared before the House of Representatives as part of its ongoing sectoral debate on diversification of the Nigerian economy. The minister said that the federal government has set up a committee to look into the financial impact of waivers that have been given by the government.
It'll will interest you to know that a committee was put together to look at waivers and look at the financial impact of waivers. Over the last 5 years, we have given away 1 trillion naira in waivers. It is quite significant, and we believe that it needs to be looked at. Import duty waivers alone, 503 billion. VAT waivers, 227 billion. We are now going to look at what is the cost benefit of these waivers, what are the jobs that they have created. What we found is that they have been abused in some cases. What we found is that the technology that is used to manage them or the methods used to manage them are manual, and therefore there's a lot of manipulation, which we intend to address. I was asked also about the infrastructure gap and measures to attract pension funds and foreign investors. The pension money is, a lot is said about the pension money. We have 6 trillion and people treat it as if it's just available for the taking. This is people's future savings. So we have to be very, very cautious about how we release pension money into investment. I think the first thing we have to do is to relax the rules cautiously and with many safeguards so that we don't lose pensioners' money and cause a problem in the future. But definitely we're going to put things in place, such as the infrastructure bonds that we're releasing, that will encourage pension funds to invest, but invest safely.
Nigeria's Minister of Finance, Kemi Adeosun. In part 2, after the break, our series reviewing the Buhari administration's 1 year in office continues today with a look at the energy sector's performance. Stay with us.